Welcome to BeFM Drama. I'm your host, Ryan Estrada, here with another brand new radio play adapted from one of the 22 forgotten winter books of Charles Dickens. Today's episode is a very weird one that I've been very excited about. See, for 4 years, Dickens tried to follow up A Christmas Carol with a new, full-length, spooky book every winter. But after those first few books, he got burned out, and he knew he couldn't keep up. So in 1850, he decided to write a short story instead. It's still pretty long because he was paid by the word, but it is one of the weirdest things I have ever read. I'll be honest, it sounds like maybe he waited until the night before the deadline. He starts just by describing every ornament on a tree for pages and pages. Then he talks about a dream where the tree turns upside down. Then for no reason he started talking about his crush on Little Red Riding Hood and other public domain characters. Then he just gave up and started talking about ghosts and dead people. And this gave me a huge challenge. How do I adapt something with no plot and no characters when the only thing that ties it together is a decoration for a holiday that my version does not take place on? Well, I took the challenge, and I did my best to include every element of the original in a new radio play. Today's story is inspired by Dickens's A Christmas Tree. We begin again with paramedics Goblin and Fern awaiting a call, with dialogue actually written by Charles Dickens himself. Please enjoy The Cursed Tree.
Some nights you never get a moment to catch your breath, but others, there's nothing to distract you from your thoughts. The quiet nights are the worst. Without pressing issues, the old regrets creep back in and take up residence. When my partner and I are waiting for a call, we often talk absolute nonsense just to keep our brains from feeding on themselves.
Little Red Riding Hood.
Really? Her? When I was a kid, I had a crush on Raquel Welch.
The cruelty and treachery of that disassembling wolf who ate her grandmother without making any impression on his appetite.
Slow night. There's a fire over on East Side, but I think they've got it covered.
And then he ate her after making that ferocious joke about his teeth.
Yeah, I hear you. She had a rough life. I just don't see it.
She was my first love, and I felt that if I could have married Little Red Riding Hood, I should have known perfect bliss. But it was not to be. And there was nothing for it but to look out for the wolf and the Noah's Ark there and put him late in the procession on the table as the monster who was to be degraded.
22 Charles.
Thank the heavens above. A call. I did not know how to respond to that.
22 Charles.
Head to Elizabethan House. We have a report of a man falling from a tree.
There's a fire going on and they got us fixing up a twisted ankle.
We've been informed that it's a very big tree.
Oh, a big one. Well, why didn't you say so?
Just do the job.
Hey, dispatch. Did you know my partner here had a crush on Little Red Riding Hood as a kid?
I'm gonna crush your head if you don't stop tying up the radio.
Well, let's go and see about this tree.
Turns out, it was a big tree. Elizabethan House was a crumbling old horseshoe-shaped residential building that opened up into a community garden courtyard. Right in the middle was a giant old spruce tree. We drove up and parked next to its massive trunk. The tree had grown so tall it reached even the top floors. Residents had attached their laundry lines to its trunk. Old sneakers dangled from its branches. It was big, but in bad shape. The needles were starting to look brown. The bark was starting to peel. The branches were starting to look bare. This once magnificent tree was on its last legs, and the building around it seemed to match. It looked like it had once been extravagant, but now it had fallen into disrepair. The paint was peeling, the concrete was chipped. The garden looked like someone had been trying to maintain it, but without the resources to do it right. All the petals from the rose bushes lay on the yellow patches of grass. Weeds choked out the vegetables. There was a small man-made pond covered in a floating layer of long dead pine needles. underneath a rusted old statue of an old man. I couldn't imagine how many hundreds of years this tree had taken to grow here, and how many more years it had been in this sorry state. The sorriest part of it all, though, was the man at the bottom, with a leg twisted in a way that legs usually don't twist. Not if you're lucky, anyway.
Oh, that looks like it hurts.
Does, yeah.
What happened?
Fell out of the tree.
I mean, I got that much. What were you, rescuing a cat or something?
Nah, I just want to see how high I could climb.
The man was surprisingly blasé about all of it, as though he'd seen so much weird stuff in his life that it didn't even faze him that his limbs looked like they were pointing to 10:30 on a clock.
Well, my partner here is going to put you in a leg splint so we can get you out of here. But it's not going to be a lot of fun for you, so why don't you talk to me for a little bit while he works?
It's bound to happen. This place is cursed.
Well, maybe we won't go climbing giant trees next time. The city should really tear this thing down before it falls down.
Oh no, they've been trying to. Residents won't allow that.
Well, someone's got to talk some sense into them.
I'm one of them.
Oh, and I can see how well that's been going for you.
This is going to hurt.
This tree's been here longer than our apartment has. Our grandparents and great-grandparents lived next to this tree. We're not going to let the city destroy it.
It's not in that good a shape. Like you said, something like this is bound to happen.
No, I didn't say it was bound to happen because of the tree. I said it was bound to happen because of the curse.
Oh, okay. Not because you climbed no broken tree.
Every apartment in this building has a ghost story.
Hey, Goblin, you want to hear some ghost stories?
I'm a little busy, and I told you, I've never been one for fairy tales.
Some fairy tales are real.
Well, that'll make my partner happy.
Yeah, I think we'll take a rain check on the ghost stories. I'll go grab the stretcher.
Suddenly, the ground seemed to shift underneath us. Broken pieces of root shot up out of the ground as the old tree started to lean. Laundry lines snapped and fell. The clothes fluttered through the sky. I was afraid at first that it would collapse into the building and tear through someone's apartment. But it toppled perfectly through the space that led out of the courtyard. All the residents were out of harm's way. But my eyes grew wide with horror when I saw what was in the tree's path.
The ambulance! No!
Oh man, bummer.
Call for backup! With what? The radio was in the ambulance.
Our ambulance was destroyed, and we were trapped inside. We had borrowed a phone and help was on its way, but we weren't sure what they'd do when they got there. The only way in was blocked by a giant fallen tree and the remains of our ride. The man seemed unfazed.
The curse.
What are you talking about? You did this! You're a grown man who refused to let the city correct a safety issue, and then climbed on it until it fell over and nearly killed someone.
I'll bet if I tell you everything that happened in this building, you'll believe me about the curse.
Yeah, I bet.
As much as we didn't want to listen, we were trapped there. And we did have to stay with our patient. So we let him tell us about the old apartment.
You see the pond over there with the statue of the old dude next to it? That's Mr. Cavalier. He built this place way back when. Put the statue there himself. Of himself. Gross. When I was a kid, on hot summer days, my buddies and I would always try wading around in there. My parents would scream at us and tell us to get out. We never knew why. What's the point of a pond if you can't splash around in it? So one day, when I was about 13, I was out on the balcony after midnight, and my parents were asleep. And I heard this splashing sound down below. And I'm like, someone's in the pond. It was dark, but I squinted my eyes and peered down there, and it was a lady. I saw her more clearly as she walked up to the statue because there's a light on it. And I realized she was wearing a white dress and soaking wet. I was a teenager. I didn't want to miss that.
I don't want to hear about your peeping Tom teen years.
It got creepy, though. She gets up real close to Mr. Cavalier's face, looks the statue right in the eyes, and she speaks in this real creepy voice. It wasn't even a whisper. It wasn't a yell. It was just this matter-of-fact voice that I heard all the way up in my apartment. She said, "The stags know." What does that even mean, right? Creepy thing to say. Then she slowly pulls out this ring of old rusted keys. She starts slowly walking around the courtyard. I can't totally see her, but I can hear the jangling of the old keys one by one, and the wet footsteps going door to door trying locks, but none of the doors open. Then I hear her on the steps. I hear her coming toward my apartment. I ran inside and started screaming for my parents to wake up. My dad ran out with a baseball bat, but no one was there.
Maybe this woman disappeared because she realized some creepy kid was staring at her and started screaming about it.
But it wasn't a woman. The next morning, they told me why no one was allowed in the pond. Back when this place was built, there was this washerwoman who drowned in that thing. Some people say Mr. Cavalier had something to do with it, but it's too long ago to know. But we do know he didn't want anyone to find out, and he tried weighing her down at the bottom so no one would find her. The only reason anyone found out was because the horses refused to drink the water. The stags knew.
Wow. Yeah, they sure did.
Stag means horse sometimes. I looked it up in the dictionary.
Yeah, I got that.
My dad told me that every few years someone sees that woman climb out of the pond, tell off old Mr. Cavalier, then start doing her rounds, and whoever saw her is cursed and befalls some horrible injury.
And lo and behold, a couple decades later, you fall out of a tree.
Oh, I've fallen out of so much stuff since then.
Backup had arrived, but still couldn't get in. A city truck came in and started sawing the old tree into pieces to clear the way. We had to stay clear, so we had nothing to do but listen to more of the man's stories.
Okay, what about this one? See apartment 503 up there? That's where the Alder family lives. A couple years back, Mrs. Alder's mom came to visit and slept on their fold-out couch. The next morning, they're all eating eggs, and Mr. Alder asked how the couch was. Because, those things are always lumpy, and they have that bar in the middle that hurts your back.
Yeah, real spooky. A haunted futon.
No. The lady goes, the bed was fine, but I wish your neighbors would quit having garden parties at all hours of the night. And Mr. Alder's like, what? And she's like, I heard a whole bunch of people out there at like 1 a.m. and someone was playing the violin. And he's like, how do I tell her that no one was in the garden last night, but that every time someone hears violin parties in the garden, they're dead within the month?
Yeah, I can imagine that's a hard conversation to start.
He didn't have the chance to. She died.
I wonder how that tree clearing is going.
Apartment 102. This old lady used to live there, and she had this old antique cuckoo clock. It was so loud that it would just echo through the courtyard. You could hear it all over the building, even at night. Everyone complained, but she wouldn't turn it off. She said it was her dead husband's or something. We got so used to it that everyone just started tuning it out.
I'm starting to tune this guy out.
But then, one day, the guy who lived above her in 202 starts telling everyone it must be broken, because in the middle of the night, he heard it strike 13. The next morning, he found out his grandpa had died. He didn't realize they were connected, but then, after that, every time someone's grandparents died, the clock would strike 13. When the old lady died, we smashed the thing to bits.
Hey, how's your leg feeling?
It hurts. Anyway, I heard that one time years ago when my parents were young, there was this little girl who lived here. And she went to play out in the garden one time and then ran back to the house screaming and crying. And she said she saw herself under the tree. And they were like, was it just your reflection in the pond? And she's like, no, it was me. But it was an old woman. And the old woman version of me lifted a finger to her lips and said, shh. And do you know what happened to that girl the very next morning?
She died?
She died.
Yikes.
You see that mural over there? There's a reason there's so much red paint. It's covered in a blood stain. No one knows what caused it. Been there since my grandpa's day. Tried scrubbing it, sanding it, power washing it, burning it off with acid, but it was always there. No darker or more pale. Finally just had to lean in, paint it red.
How many people have died in this building? And why do you still live here?
Doesn't matter if you leave. They don't even need to die in this building. The dead still come. This guy over in 406 said when he was in elementary school, he had this buddy named Harry. One day they were debating whether there's an afterlife. 406 said there was, Harry said no way, so they made a blood oath so that whoever died first had to come back and tell the other what was on the other side. And they lost touch, because who still stays friends with the people they knew in elementary school? Then, like 40-some years later, looks out his window and sees Harry standing outside. At first he's surprised he recognized him after so long. Then he's more surprised the guy's standing outside a 4th-story window. Harry just says, "You were right." Come to find out, he died while off in business in India.
Oh, Okay.
Worst of all was the kid who died in that tree.
Wait, you knew there was a story about someone who died in this tree, and you still climbed it? And still blame ghosts?
This new woman who's just moved in kept posting passive-aggressive notes telling people to keep their kids from climbing the tree. Said she saw some one-legged kid who looked like he was about to fall and get hurt. But there wasn't any one-legged kid living there. There had been, 50 years earlier. All the other kids had picked on him way back when. They wouldn't play with him. So one day they dared him to climb the tree, and he wanted to prove he could do it. But he never made it. Fell down and died.
You don't see that this story is a little more related to your situation than the others?
Every once in a while, one of the kids in the building will come home saying they met that boy. They invited them to climb the tree with them. I mean, they never do. They're too scared. But whether it's within a few weeks, a few years, after high school, or in their 20s, those kids always die young. The ghost boy is looking for playmates.
Why would you climb the tree?
I wanted to prove I wasn't afraid.
Look, man, I get it. The world is a scary place. Things people do, the mistakes we make, it can be terrifying. But sometimes we have to tell ourselves these stories in ways that make them make sense. Making it a horror story is something less scary than realizing the true horror. That sometimes things are our fault. And if you ask me, ghost stories are often just rebranded guilt. Isn't it entirely possible that you just did something dumb and reckless, risked the lives of yourself and your neighbors, flattened an ambulance, and nearly squished me with a tree?
Oh, did I ever tell you about the door that can never open? Rumor has it there was a young orphan boy boarded up inside.
That's it! I'm out! I'm climbing over that tree myself just to get out of here.
Eventually we got out and another ambulance took our patient to the hospital. We got a new one the next day and got back to work. As much as I was happy to have survived the fall, I was equally happy not to have to listen to more horror stories. Fairy tales, on the other hand.
Hey, you think the wolf from the Three Little Pigs is the same one that ate Little Red Riding Hood? Like, you think it could be like a whole cinematic universe?
No, I don't think about stuff like that.
Oh, hear me out. I mean, he's the big bad wolf, right? And he comes breaking down doors wherever he goes, eats Goldilocks next. Oh, wait, no, hang on. That was the Three Bears, right? He's huffing and puffing, he's blowing down houses, he's breaking down doors, he's eating my girl, and then he's going after to chase it with a side of bacon.
Whatever you say, Fern.
Thank you for listening to BeFM Drama. This was The Cursed Tree, based on The Christmas Tree by Charles Dickens. This radio drama was written by me, Ryan Estrada. It starred Sam Hazelton as Goblin, Kelly Brasbridge as Fern, me as Philip, and Angelique Lazarus as Dispatch. Most of the music from this episode is by Unheard Music Concepts and was released under Creative Commons Attribution License. Hidden Agenda, Asian Drums, and Unseen Horrors were by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech and released under a Creative Commons Attribution License. Tune into the next episode of BeFM Drama for another Goblin story, Ghosts for Dinner. It's about an old woman who's expecting some very unusual guests. Thank you for listening. See you next time on BeFM Drama.